ごきげんよう、3つです。以前お話しした通り、今主要メディアはトランプが選挙の不正について根拠のない嘘を言っているという根拠のない嘘を連日流しています。嘘かどうかは司法が決めることであり、裁判の前にメディアが一方的に嘘やと判断して決めつけ、それを国民に向けて連日流して印象操作をしているということがいかに異常なことか、まともな人なら理解できるかと思います。そもそも選挙はまだ終わってすらなく、バイデンは政権移行を管理する政府機関からも認められていません。主要メディアが勝手に、それこそ何の根拠もなくバイデンが次期大統領に決まったと報道しているだけなんですね。実際にはトランプが圧勝していて、本来なら当選に必要な270人の選挙人を余裕で獲得していたということについてもお伝えした通りです。これは民主党、FBI、CIA、主要メディア、大手 SNS 企業など天竜人の勢力が一致団結、共謀してアメリカ政府に対して起こしているクーデターなんです。おそらくテレビや新聞からしか情報を得る習慣がない大多数の人たちにとっては耳を疑うような話でしょうが、もしも今この動画を見ている視聴者の中でバイデン当選が嘘やということが信じられないんやったら、5分10分でいいのでインターネットで能動的に一度調べてみてください。バイデンが次期大統領という根拠は11月18日現在メディアの報道以外に一つもありません。選挙で不正がなかったという報道も大嘘です。これはいずれ裁判で明らかになることであり、メディアにそんなことを判断する権利はありません。国民が投票で大統領を決めるという資本主義制度に対する冒涜ですからね。これは関係ないよその国の話ではありません。皆さんも知っておかなければいけないんです。今日世界中で選挙で不正が行われていて、日本もその例外ではないからです。トランプが勝てばいずれ首謀者の連中の一部は逮捕されることになるでしょうが、ぜひこのクーデターに関わった連中は芋づる式に全員逮捕してもらいたいですね。そしてアメリカのメディアが流している嘘の情報をそのまんま日本に持ってきて流している日本のメディア、本当にゴミですね。見る価値ゼロです。今回皆さんにシェアするのは、先日アメリカ上院の司法委員会で行われた公聴会の模様です。アメリカではこれまでにもたびたび SNS 企業のトップたちが呼ばれているんですが、問題があるから何回も呼ばれるんですよね。今回の公聴会の一部を見れば皆さんも気になっているであろう、なぜ SNS 企業は民主党の肩を持つのか、そして連中の計画に不都合な真実を投稿すると検閲に引っかかるというのは本当なのかということについて理解が深まると思います。
First, I want to talk a little bit about federal law, existing federal law, and what it requires. Section 5 of the Federal Trade Commission Act prohibits businesses from engaging in unfair or deceptive trade practices. Compliance with this particular law requires that there be some consistency between what a company represents as their practices and their products and what they actually are. In other words, you can't sell one thing and provide another under the guise of providing something different than what's being sold. Both Twitter and Facebook represent and have represented for years to their users, their customers, that they take a neutral approach to election content moderation. However, as we've heard today, and as we will continue to hear today and into the foreseeable future, there are instances in which your platforms are taking a very distinctively partisan approach, and not a neutral one, to election-related content moderation. For example, just days before the election, Twitter suspended the account of Mark Morgan. Now, Mark Morgan is the commissioner of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Office. And they suspended Commissioner Morgan's Twitter account, specifically for a tweet celebrating the success of the U.S. southern border wall. Apparently, Commissioner Morgan's tweet, his comments about the border wall, violated Twitter platform rules governing what it calls hateful conduct. Now, I've read the offending post, and the offending post from Commissioner Mark Morgan reads as follows. At CBP and the Army Corps of Engineers, continue to build new wall every day. Every mile helps us stop gang members, murderers, sexual predators, and drugs from entering our country. It's a fact. Walls work. Period. Close quote. Mr. Dorsey, can you tell me in one sentence what exactly is hateful about Commissioner Morgan's tweet that I just read?
Well, we evaluated this tweet again, and we found that we were wrong. That was a mistake, and it was due to the fact that we had heightened awareness around government accounts during this time. So that was a mistake. We reverted it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to get back to more of that in a minute and get back to the fact that, I understand that mistakes happen. But what we're going to see today is that mistakes happen a whole lot more, almost entirely on one side of the political aisle rather than the other. Now, Commissioner Morgan's statement in that tweet, as was initially taken down, is factual. There's nothing remotely hateful about it, and yet it was taken down. Now, on October 15th, Facebook relied on a third-party fact-checker's assessment to ban 2 advertisements from Facebook for, quote, partly false information. Now, both of these advertisements were factual in nature, and they revealed Joe Biden's and Kamala Harris's views on late-term abortion. Joe Biden has stated that he won't accept any restrictions on abortion, and Senator Harris's views are such that she voted against requiring care for a child born alive during a botched abortion. The very next day, the third-party fact-checker issued a statement retracting the assessment and retracting it as erroneous. However, it stunningly took Facebook almost 2 more weeks until October 29th, when voting had already started in many jurisdictions, to lift the ban on these legitimate ads that the fact-checker had already declared a couple weeks earlier were erroneously taken down. So, Mr. Zuckerberg, why on earth did it take Facebook 2 weeks to correct this error?
Senator, I'm not familiar with the details of us re-enabling that ad, so I can follow up with you after. It's possible that this was just a mistake or delay, and unfortunately, when we handle millions or billions of pieces of content a day, while we strive to do as well as possible and be as precise as possible, we will make some mistakes.
Thank you. I appreciate your acknowledgement of the fact that there are mistakes. As I've noted previously, those mistakes sure happen a whole lot more on one side of the political spectrum than the other. Now, this is understandable. We're humans, but it's also understandable why this might occur. Maybe some of it has to do with your employees. 92.83% of Facebook employees who donated to federal candidates gave to Democrats. At Twitter, it's even more stark than that, as if it could get much more stark, but 99.3% of Twitter employees who donated to federal candidates gave to Democrats. And so these mistakes, they may be mistakes, but they're mistakes that rhyme. They may not repeat themselves, but they rhyme. And the consistent theme happens to be Republicans, conservatives, and pro-life activists. Now, I'd like to ask both of you, is there a list of every user or every content creator who has been deplatformed or had their content's reach altered or have had some other adverse action taken by either Facebook or Twitter altered? Is there some list that identifies each user for which that has happened? Mr. Zuckerberg, let's hear from you. Just a yes or no question. Does such a list exist?
Senator, I'm not aware of anything like that existing.
Mr. Dorsey, how about you?
Not exactly sure what you're asking, but yeah. we certainly...
Simple question. Do you have a list of people, your users or content creators, who have had some adverse action taken against them, either being deplatformed or having their reach altered or something because of the content of their posts?
Well, certainly whenever we take an action, it's recorded somewhere in a database, but I'm not sure if that's your intent.
No, that's helpful. So what I'm hearing from both of you is that while there may not be an actual list, and I'd like you both to check to see if such a list exists, but even if there isn't, there is a de facto list because you have within your databases records of occasions when this has occurred. And so I'd like to ask both of you, if such a list exists, please send it to me. I'd like to see it. If such a list does not exist, you certainly do have the data necessary in order to generate some, and I request as a member of this committee that you generate such a list and provide it to me. I recently posted something about the election on Facebook, and my Facebook post was almost immediately tagged with the following, quote, election officials say that voter fraud, which is historically rare, has not affected the outcome in this election. They have confirmed that mail-in voting was conducted in accordance with state voting rules, close quote. Now, I find this a little disturbing. Tag to me sounds a whole lot more like state-run media announcing the party line rather than a neutral company, as it purports to be, running an open online forum. This kind of editorializing insulates people from the truth, and it insinuates that anyone concerned about voter fraud must be crazy. It also states it as if it were an irrefutable, neutral, objective fact. Now, maybe these kinds of concerns are out of the mainstream in Palo Alto, but they're not out of the mainstream with the rest of America. And I have to reiterate, I hope this kind of manipulation wasn't intentional, but it's getting harder and harder for me to accept the premise that it could be anything but intentional. And if it was intentional, it's yet more evidence that Facebook's actions surrounding this election are incongruent with the promises that you've made to your own users. And that's a problem.
Mit's channel.
皆さんの多くが今思っていることをパンダが代弁しようと思います。ツイッターの CEO、花火取れ、ひげそれ、なめとんかい割れということではないでしょうか。以上、日本の国益のためにもトランプが勝利するようみんなで祈りましょう。ほな。